All right. Well, welcome everybody. My name is Karen Goldner with the Women's Business Development Center in our Chicago office, and I'm glad to welcome you to lesson 5 of our partnership with the IRS. And I will turn it over to Mike Madrancic to cover our topic for today, which is something that is really important to a lot of small businesses: how to deal with federal taxes when you're hiring employees, whether they're employees or independent contractors. Mike, take it away.
Thanks, Karen, and thanks everyone for being here today. So today's lesson, this is one of 8 lessons in what we have as the Small Business Tax Workshop. So this is lesson 5 of 8, and the remaining lessons will be presented over the next day and then week. So today's lesson is on federal taxes when hiring employees or independent contractors. So when we use the word federal taxes in this situation, what we're talking about is uh, income tax. Income tax that you would be withholding from employees. Also, Medicare and Social Security tax that's being withheld from employee pay. And then independent contractors, for you as the employer, it's little bit easier in that the independent contractor is going to be responsible for the payment of income tax, Social Security, and Medicare tax over to the government. But you still will have to provide that information in terms of how much income was earned from you as the employer. You have to identify that to the independent contractor and to the IRS through some reporting that you'll need to do. And the most important decision you'll make is identifying whether or not the individuals are independent contractors or employees. So we'll be talking about that. Let's get into the lesson today. And we will be discussing, as the notes say on the screen, your responsibilities as an employer or as one who pays others for services. So if you're an employer, you've got employees. If you're paying others to provide services to you, you're paying independent contractors, trying to make that distinction in that first bullet point. We'll look at determining whether individuals providing the service to you are employees or independent contractors, a very important determination. And you'll see that the IRS can help you in making that determination if you're having a hard time. Employer responsibilities. We mentioned up front that as an employer with employees, you'll need to withhold and pay income taxes from the employee's pay. You'll also need to withhold and pay Social Security and Medicare taxes from the employee's pay. You'll withhold and pay what we call additional Medicare taxes from certain more highly compensated employees. And you may have to pay unemployment tax as an employer. This is the employer's responsibility, and you would file the unemployment tax return on that Form 940, which is identified in that last bullet point. So again, that last tax, unemployment tax, is strictly the employer's responsibility. So let's talk about a little bit more about the overview. We'll go through the employer independent contractor scenario. We'll also look at your responsibilities as an employer to determine whether the individual is eligible to work in the United States. We'll identify a Form W-4, which is called the Employee's Withholding Certificate. I mentioned that you as the employer, if you've got employees, you'll have to withhold federal income tax from the employee's pay and pay it over to the IRS. The employee identifies how much federal income tax should be withheld by filing with you, the employer, this Form W-4. Will identify for you as the employer how you can verify work names and social security numbers of individuals who are coming to you to work as employees. We'll also identify and help you understand your responsibilities as an employer in filing Form W-2, which is a wage and tax statement. That wage and tax statement is completed by the employer, and it identifies for the employee how much wages and how much taxes were withheld from the employee's wages during the year. That W-2 is given to the employee and also to the Social Security Administration. The Social Security Administration then shares that information with the IRS. We'll also talk about the Earned Income Tax Credit, which is a tax credit for lower income employees or individuals, and a responsibility that an employer has in that area. We'll talk about individual taxpayer identification numbers, which are for individuals who can't get a Social Security number. The individual taxpayer identification number is what is used to identify them with filing tax returns and with other forms. We'll also talk about how you as the employer can file what we call information returns. An information return, an example is the Form W-2. You're providing information to the employee, you're providing information to the IRS, you're providing information to the Social Security Administration. That's one example of an information return. And you can file them with the IRS. You have to file them with the IRS and Social Security Administration, but we'll show you the free options, the free systems that are available in order for you to do that. So let's start with employment taxes. Kind of a definition. What are employment taxes? They are the income taxes, the federal income taxes, and everything we're talking about here in this presentation are federal taxes. For state taxes, you'll need to go to the State Department of Revenue in your particular state. But here we're talking about income taxes as one of the employment taxes. We're also talking about Federal Insurance Contribution Act taxes, the employee share. So you as the employer are going to be withholding the employee's share from the employee's pay of their Social Security and Medicare taxes. For employees that are highly compensated, and we're talking now about over $200,000 of wage income, there's an additional Medicare tax that you would need to withhold once the employee meets that threshold. That would be withheld and also paid over to the IRS. These employment taxes are also known as trust fund taxes because you as the employer are withholding them from your employees' pay, and you're holding them in trust for your employees because those taxes need to be paid over to the IRS and the federal government. So you're holding them in trust until you pay them over to the IRS. Now, in addition, let me go back just one screen. And this third bullet point, the Federal Insurance Contribution Act, the employee share. Not only are you as the employer for your employees withholding the employee share of Social Security and Medicare taxes, but there's also, here on the next slide, an employer's matching share of the FICA taxes, which would be the Social Security tax and the Medicare tax. So you would also, as part of the employment tax equation, be including your employer's share, matching share of those FICA taxes. So if you're a non-agricultural employer, you're going to report the employment taxes to the Internal Revenue Service on a form, and it's typically this Form 941, which is the employer's quarterly federal tax return. Most employers are filing this return on a quarterly basis using the Form 941. Now, for very, very small employers, that reporting actually will take place on an annual basis using a Form 944, which is the employer's annual federal tax return. Again, even though it says it's identified as a federal tax return, which might lend you to think that they're talking about an income tax return, in this situation, we're talking about employment taxes. Now, I mentioned that employers also may have to pay federal unemployment tax. Federal unemployment tax is an employer's responsibility only. You're not withholding any unemployment tax from your employee's pay. This is strictly the employer's responsibility and liability. You'd also, in addition to paying that unemployment tax to the IRS, you'll be filing an unemployment tax return. It's typically that Form 940, the employer's annual federal unemployment tax return. Now, everything I've talked about over the last slide and a half has been your responsibility as an employer when you've got employees. Now, if you have independent contractors working for you, you may not have to withhold or pay taxes on payments that you make to the independent contractor. There are some occasions where you do have to withhold taxes on payments to independent contractors, and those situations are noted there. If that independent contractor does not provide you with a taxpayer identification number, and that taxpayer identification number can either be a social security number or this individual taxpayer identification number, the ITIN that I mentioned on one of the earlier slides, and that we'll go into in one of the later slides. You also may have to withhold or pay taxes on payments to independent contractors if you're instructed to do so by the IRS. Now, in addition to presenting the information here on the slides, we also, during the presentation today, want to provide you with additional resources available through irs.gov that you'll have after our 1 hour that we have here today. The first one that we're mentioning here is Publication 15, the Employer's Tax Guide. And it is a free publication. Everything that I'm mentioning here today is free, available through irs.gov. It's the publication that provides all the details that will explain in much more detail what I'm going over here today. So in addition to that publication, we have on irs.gov this screenshot of this site, which is a one-stop resource for employment taxes, federal employment taxes. As you can see, some of the links that are available: understanding employment taxes, depositing and reporting employment taxes. You know, we've mentioned here superficially here that over the first few slides that if you're an employer, you're both depositing these taxes that you're withholding, you're depositing them with the IRS, but you're also reporting the numbers on employment tax returns. There's a link to help you understand employment tax due dates. We always, unfortunately, do see some mistakes being made on employment tax returns and employment tax payments. And we've got a link to help you correct those mistakes when they do occur. We'll talk about e-filing, all these forms that we're talking about, because we want you to use the e-file options, which are the safest, most secure, most accurate way to file these employment tax forms. But let's start getting into the meat of how to determine whether an individual that you're going to be using as to provide services to you, whether that individual is an employee or independent contractor. And the courts have considered many facts in deciding whether a worker is an employee or an independent contractor, and we'll be talking about them here. The relevant facts fall into three main categories that you see on the screen. Whether you as the employer have behavioral control, whether you as the employer have financial control, and then the relationship of the parties. And we'll talk about each of these over the next few slides. It's important to consider all of the facts. These are all fact-based decisions, so it's important to consider everything that we'll be talking about. Let's start with behavioral control. The facts about behavioral control show whether there is a right to direct or to control how the worker performs the specific task for which he or she is hired. So it's the right of the employer to direct or control. So as an employer, you've got to ask yourself, does my business have the right to direct and control how the worker does the work I hired them to do? Not just the end result, but am I telling the worker what they need to do to achieve those end results? Can the employer tell the worker when and where to do the work? Can the employer determine what tools or equipment the worker should use or where to purchase supplies and services? Can the employer control whether the worker can hire assistants? Can the employer control what work a specific individual must do and the order in which that work must be done? Does the employer train the worker? Generally, if the employer has the right to control what will be done and how it will be done, then the worker is an employee. A worker is considered an employee when the business has the right to direct and control the worker. The employer does not have to actually direct and control the way the work is done. The employer has behavioral control over the individuals hired as long as the employer, again, has the right to direct and control the work. That's behavioral control. Let's look now at financial control. As the employer, you need to ask yourself, who directs or controls the economic aspects of the work? Or more importantly, who can direct and control the business aspects of the work? If the answer is employers with employees would direct or control the business aspects of the work, and these include things like how the worker is paid, whether expenses are reimbursed, who provides tools and supplies. So, for example, an employee who has an established salary with no opportunity to make a profit or suffer a loss in connection with the services they provide, that's an employer-employee relationship. Now, independent contractors, however, are in business for themselves. They usually offer their services to the public and have a significant financial investment in their business. They also have their own tools and equipment. Independent contractors are more likely to have out-of-pocket business expenses, and they can have profits or losses. Let's also take a look at the relationship with the worker. Now, when you consider this category, you think about the relationship you intend as the employer to have with the worker. If you as the employer provide employee benefits such as health insurance, a pension plan, or paid vacation or sick days, this generally is an employer-employee relationship. You also must consider the importance of the worker's services. If the worker provides services that are a key aspect of your regular business activity, it's more likely that that worker is an employee. So let's look at determining the worker's status. It's important to remember that just signing a contract that states the worker is an independent contractor does not automatically make the worker an independent contractor. All the categories of control must be considered, and no single fact determines whether the worker is an employee or independent contractor. Deciding the worker's employment status up front is important for both you and the worker. If you misclassify workers as independent contractors and have no reasonable basis for doing so, you may be liable for employment taxes in the event where the IRS challenges the classification. If you're still uncertain about the worker's employment status, the IRS can help you. You can send in this IRS Form SS-8, which is entitled Determination of Worker Status for Purposes of Federal Employment Taxes and Income Tax Withholding. And the IRS may be able to send you and the worker a determination letter. You can find the SS-8 at irs.gov, and determining the status of the worker is just the first step in understanding your federal tax responsibilities as an employer. This is to give you a visual. This is the form SS-8. There are instructions for every form that the IRS publishes. So you can complete the form based upon the instructions, send it to the IRS, and the IRS can help you make the determination. We also have at irs.gov this site within irs.gov titled Independent Contractor or Employee. So much more detail of what I just discussed can be provided to you there and help you understand the rules to help you make that determination. In addition, there is the Independent Contractor Defined website within irs.gov. And that, again, just another resource for you. Now let's focus on your responsibilities as an employer where you have employees. We're going to cover over the next few slides your responsibilities in determining eligibility of the individual to work in the United States. We'll look at that Form W-4, where if you hire an employee, the employee is identifying for you on that Form W-4 how much federal income tax withholding should be withheld from their pay. So Form W-4 is strictly for federal income tax withholding. We'll identify your responsibility to verify a social security number of the individual who's coming to you seeking to work as an employee. We'll identify the Form W-2, which is, again, another responsibility of the employer to document on that W-2 how much the employee has earned and how much taxes the employee was paid during the year. We'll look at another responsibility if you're an employer who has employees at the lower end of the income scale, identifying for those employees their possible eligibility for the earned income tax credit. And we'll also talk about individual taxpayer identification number. That's again a situation where an individual does not qualify to receive a Social Security number, that they need to can get an individual taxpayer identification number from the IRS. So let's start with determining you as the employer needing to determine the eligibility of the individual coming to you, whether they can work legally in the United States. As an employer, you are responsible for determining that employees are legally eligible to work in the United States. To work in the United States, the employee must be a U.S. citizen, a national, or a lawful permanent resident, or must have been granted authorization to work in the United States. U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, with the acronym USCIS, requires that all employers and employees complete the Form I-9, which is the Employment Eligibility Verification Form. While citizens and nationals of the United States are automatically eligible for employment, they too must present proof of identity and employment eligibility by completing the Form I-9. As an employer, you complete the employer section of that Form I-9. This certifies that you have reviewed original documents establishing the identity and employment eligibility of the employee. Form I-9 lists several documents or combination of documents that the employee must show you to satisfy the requirement. For example, an employee may provide a U.S. passport or a driver's license or a birth certificate. You can find Form I-9 as well as more information on the USCIS's website. Now, an employee has 3 business days from the date that employment begins to show you the required documentation or a receipt for a replacement document if documents are lost or stolen. While you can terminate the employment of an employee who does not submit a completed Form 99 and the required documentation, you must apply this rule to all your employees. Employers are not responsible for the authenticity of the documents. However, if a document does not appear genuine, do not accept it. You do not need to file the I-9 with the USCIS, but you must keep the I-9 for 3 years after the date of hire or 1 year after employment ends, whichever is later. For more information, we encourage you to go to the USCIS website, look at the Form I-9 instructions, and again, use that USCIS website and the resources that are available there. For a visual, this is the Form I-9 from the USCIS. And as was mentioned in the slides, there's a section for the employee to provide information and attest to the information. And as you can see, I'm very sorry, at the very bottom there of the screen, Section 2, Employer Review and Verification. So just giving you a visual. Again, this is information available at the USCIS website. I mentioned that we're also going to cover here the Form W-4, which is the Employee's Withholding Certificate. And on this withholding certificate, the employee, your employee, is identifying for you how much federal income tax should be withheld from their pay. You as the employer, each employee must complete the Form W-4, and that's completed on an annual basis. There are additional information on completing this form, the W-4, is included with the instructions. That Form W-4 is available again at irs.gov. As the employer, you're going to use the employee's gross wages and the information the employee provides on the Form W-4 to calculate the amount of federal income tax to withhold. If an employee does not give you a signed W-4, you as the employer withhold at the rate of a single taxpayer. So I think we're probably all aware on the income tax return that we file with the IRS, the Form 1040, we identify whether we're filing as a single taxpayer, as someone who's married filing joint, and there are a couple other categories. But if the individual that you're employing does not give you a signed Form W-4, you're going to withhold income tax as if that individual is a single person. Now, if an employee claims to be exempt from federal income tax withholding, that exemption only applies to income tax, not the Social Security or Medicare taxes that we've also talked about. Employees that are claiming exemption from withholding must submit a new Form W-4 each year by February 15th to reestablish their exempt status. To give you a visual of that Form W-4, this is the screenshot that I'm showing you right now. This is the first two steps of the Form W-4. Again, the employee is filling this out and submitting it to you. In step two is where, well, in step one, they're identifying their personal information. In step 1C, they're identifying whether they're filing their income tax return with the IRS as a single person or married filing separately, married filing jointly, head of household. In step two, this is where the employee will be providing information to determine the withholding amount that should be withheld by the employee, again, of federal income taxes. Now, IRS has a tool that you can point your employees to, which is this tax withholding estimator, and it can help them determine the amount of federal income tax withholding that they should identify for you as the employee. The tax withholding estimator is particularly useful in a situation, for example, if an individual is your employee, but they also have side jobs, say they're a carpenter and they make money on the side as a carpenter, that the tax withholding estimator will help them incorporate all their sources of income and all their deductions and their credits to get a more accurate withholding because they have not only the wage income, which is easier to determine the withholding amount on, but they also have some other income that is not subject to the withholding from an employer. So this tax withholding estimator is a great resource. Okay, we also mentioned that as an employer, your responsibility includes to get from each of your employees Social Security numbers and to enter them on the Form W-2, that wage and tax statement. So you're getting that Social Security number from the employee. You should ask the employee to show you his or her Social Security card, and although you are not required, you can keep a copy of the card for your files. To verify a worker's Social Security number, the Social Security Administration website offers some help. You can use the Social Security number verification service to verify up to 10 names and Social Security numbers instantly, or you can upload batch files of up to 250,000 names and numbers and receive results the very next business day. To explore these options, again, this is from the Social Security Administration. You need to become a registered user of the Social Security Administration website. You can visit ssa.gov. And when you use the Social Security number verification, the Social Security Administration will only tell you if the name and the Social Security numbers match. So that service is going to tell you whether there is a match between what you provided from what the employee gave you and what the Social Security Administration has on its records. If the name and the number do not match, it's up to you, the employer, to get the correct name or Social Security number from your employee. Go to Social Security Administration, ssa.gov, and the services that I'm talking about on ssa.gov are the business services online. And through that business services online, the Social Security number verification service. This is the product that I'm talking about. You have to sign up, create an account to use it. But again, free services, free product that you can use from the Social Security Administration. Now, in addition, there is a product that is available through the Department of Homeland Security, and it is called E-Verify. It verifies a name matches a Social Security number. So with that said, a person in the United States may have a valid Social Security number, but not be authorized to work in the United States. So with that Social Security product, Social Security Administration product, you're verifying a Social Security number and the name. But here at E-Verify, you're verifying that the person that has a valid Social Security number is also authorized to work in the United States. E-Verify is a web-based system that allows enrolled employers. So again, you'll need to enroll in to use this service. Enrolled employers can confirm the eligibility of their employees to work in the United States. E-Verify employers verify the identity and employment eligibility of newly hired employees by electronically matching information provided by the employees on the Form I-9 against records available to the Social Security Administration and the Department of Homeland Security. So this is the website, E-Verify, and it is available to you. Again, you need to sign up to use it, but another free resource to make sure you're meeting your employer responsibilities. Okay, you've got employees, you've paid your employees during the year. You also need to complete a Form W-2, which is the wage and tax statement for each employee, and you're completing it for the calendar year. As an employer, you've got to complete the W-2 for each of your employees. The W-2 shows the amount of compensation paid to employees and the amount of taxes withheld for the year. The Social Security Administration uses the Form W-2 to update an employer's lifelong earning history, and then from that earning history, calculate the employee's Social Security benefits. Because this information is so important, you can be assessed a penalty for W-2 names and Social Security numbers that do not match. So it's important to verify Social Security numbers and names. Make sure you get that done correctly. This is a visual of the document, the Form W-2. We probably all receive these during our lifetimes, identifying our wages. and the Medicare and Social Security taxes and the federal income tax. In addition, state taxes are identified down at the bottom. So when you hire new employees, you always want to verify the name and social security number. I hope we've made that clear over the previous slides. Ask them the possible employees to have them show you their social security card if it's available. Again, it's okay to photocopy the social security card. It's not required, but it is okay. Keep your payroll records up to date. And this applies to both new and existing employees. Remind employees to report any name change due to marriage, adoption, divorce, or other circumstance, first to the Social Security Administration and then to you. Make sure employees know that notifying their employer of a name change is not enough. You've got to do it with the Social Security Administration. And they complete the form SS5, which is application for a Social Security card, to have the change made on their Social Security record. So just a little more information there for you. Documenting the steps that you take to obtain and correct any name and Social Security number mismatches may help you avoid costly penalties down the line. One of those steps is getting the Form W-4, which also shows an employee's name and Social Security number, and keeping it in your files. If you relied on the information provided by your employee on their Form W-4 to prepare their Form W-2, the IRS may waive penalties. The law does allow a waiver of penalties where an employer had reasonable cause for including incorrect information on Form W-2. Let's talk about issuing the Forms W-2. Now, all employers must issue Forms W-2 to report the wages and the withholding to their employers by January 31st. If your employee leaves before the end of the year, you can give them Form W-2 at any time after they leave, as long as it is before January 31st. If an employee asks for their Form W-2, you have 30 days after the last pay date or 30 days after they leave, whichever is later. You can file the Form W-2 electronically with the Social Security Administration. And companies filing 250 or more of the Forms W-2 must file those W-2s electronically and must be sent to the Social Security Administration by January 31st. Well, how can you get those forms to the Social Security Administration? There's two electronic filing methods, and we highly encourage you to use the electronic filing methods. You can upload in the first method, you, the employer, are going to upload a wage report. If you use software that matches the required format, you can upload your files to the Social Security Administration. Software specifications and more information can be found at ssa.gov/employer. In the second method, called Forms W-2/W-3 online, you can complete up to 50 Form W-2s at the Social Security Administration's website and print copies suitable for distribution to your employees. In this method, no software is required. A Form W-3, which is called Transmittal of Income and Tax Statement, is created for each W-2 online report, even if multiple reports are for the same employer identification number. For more information, you can go to ssa.gov/employer. Um, Now, both the online options require registration with that Business Services Online website at ssa.gov/BSO. From the BSO website, you select register and complete the information, and you'll be assigned a user ID. It will immediately choose your own password, and third-party preparers, meaning payroll companies, need to register only once and not for every client that they represent. So just a little more information for you. There again are visuals for you at Social Security Administration, ssa.gov, the Business Services Online for employers. You can see at the bottom left-hand side of the screen, it specifically identifies for employers, links to take you to get the information and to sign you up. And then the Business Services Online, which is also through the there's the specific site there. So, okay, if you have employees that are at the lower end of the income scale, you want to know about the earned income tax credit and a responsibility that an employer has. Now, the earned income tax credit, EITC, or sometimes it's EIC, is a refundable tax credit, meaning that if you have your individual income tax return and you put in a claim for the earned income tax credit and you qualify for that credit and it qualifies you to get a refund, that refund would be paid to you. That's what a refundable credit means. Now, the earned income tax credit is a refundable credit for people who work but do not earn high incomes. As an employer, you may be required to notify an employee that they may be able to claim a tax refund because of the earned income tax credit. And employers must also notify employees who have no income tax withheld that they may be eligible for the earned income tax credit. This does not include employees that claimed exemption from withholding. We also encourage you to notify employees when their income is below the maximum income threshold allowed for claiming the earned income tax credit, that they may be eligible for the earned income tax credit. This is because eligible employees may get a refund of the earned income tax credit that is more than the tax they owe. There is a notice that the IRS publishes, and that is the notice 1015. Have you told your employees about the earned income tax credit? That provides information on your responsibilities as an employer to notify your employees. The IRS has also produced Notice 797, entitled Possible Federal Tax Refund Due to the Earned Income Tax Credit, that you can provide to these employees to make them aware of the possible federal refund due to the EITC. IRS Publication 15, which is the Employer's Tax Guide, also includes more information about this responsibility. This just visuals for you, the Notice 1015 that will provide information to you as the employers about your responsibility. And then on the right-hand side, my right-hand side, the Notice 797, which you can give to your employees who may be in that situation. We've been talking about Social Security numbers, but there are individuals in the United States who do not qualify for a Social Security number, and they need an identification number when filing these tax returns and getting information. IRS came up with this, which is the individual tax identification number. The acronym is ITIN. The IRS issues the ITIN and is issued to individuals who are required to have a U.S. taxpayer identification number, but who do not have and are not eligible to get a Social Security number from the Social Security Administration. ITINs are not valid for employment and should not be used on workers' forms W-2. They do not provide eligibility for Social Security benefits or the Earned Income Tax Credit. An ITIN is a 9-digit number beginning with the number 9, and it's formatted just like a Social Security number. An ITIN is, again, obtained from the IRS. Now, independent contractors, let's talk about independent contractors. You, as the organization that employed these individuals as independent contractors, need to file the Form 1099-NEC. NEC stands for non-employee compensation. And you're filing it with the IRS by January 31st of the following year. You're also providing a copy of the 1099 NEC to that independent contractor, again by January 31st. And you're identifying on the 1099 NEC the payments that were received by the independent contractor from your organization for the calendar year. Again, if they're an independent contractor, the independent contractor most likely is going to be responsible for paying over the federal income tax, the Social Security tax, and the Medicare tax that is their responsibility as an independent contractor. You, as the employer, you're filing the Form 1099 NEC. There's a couple of ways you can file it with the IRS. And these systems that I'm talking about are free and available to you from IRS. The first one is filing information returns electronically, the FIRE system. You can get information about the FIRE system through irs.gov. In order to use the FIRE system, you're submitting this Form 4419, and you want to submit it at least 45 days before the due date of the returns to set up your account with the IRS. And that's, again, the Form 4419. There is an IRS publication, 1220, which identifies specifications for the software that you would need to use in order to use the FIRE system. And that's that publication 1220 identifies that information. To give you a visual for the actual paper form of the Form 1099 NEC, this is what you're looking at on the screen right now. It is identifying over at the very top left, my left, the payer's information. So you, the organizer, the organization that's paying the independent contractor, are identifying your organization up there at the top. The non-employee compensation is identified in box 1. And then the recipient's information is provided there over on the left-hand side as well. So this is the paper copy. Of course, you can use software to file the same information. And this is being filed with the IRS. To get more information about the filing information returns electronically system, IRS has a site to give you all the information you need to know. In addition, IRS, just within the last year and a half, has put out a new system that you can also use to file the Form 1099, and which includes the Form 1099 NEC. There are a large number of Forms 1099, a 1099 miscellaneous, a 1099 DIV, which stands for dividends. These are all what we call information return forms, where, for example, if I was getting a Form 1099-DIV, that means my brokers, say I have money invested at Vanguard and I've earned dividends during the year, that Vanguard is going to submit to me a Form 1099-DIV identifying the dividends that I earned during the year. In addition, that 1099-DIV is being reported to the IRS as well. So there are a number of Forms 1099 you can file, and you can file with the IRIS system. You can also use this system as well. IRIS stands for Information Return. I'm sorry, Information Returns Intake System. I should have that down by now. IRIS, Information Returns Intake System. So the difference between the FIRE system and the IRIS system is you go in through irs.gov to the IRIS system, and it's all online. It's through an IRS portal. There's no, you don't have to buy the software and then go through the software to file with the IRS and upload to the IRS. Here, you're going through the portal, the IRS portal, uploading it directly to IRS. No third-party software. So this is a free system as well. Free system available to you. And let's see. Okay, to finish out this presentation, we understand that business owners, and especially small business owners, where you're so heavily invested, everyone as a business owner is invested in their business and working hard to make that business work. And taxes are just a portion of what you need to worry about and understand. But we understand a lot of business owners use payroll providers to help them with these obligations. So we want to give you over the next few slides some information to help you if you do choose to use a payroll provider to make good choices and to get more information to help you make those choices. So payroll duties include, as we've been talking over the presentation today, the need for you to withhold and report and pay these tax obligations, and that you're reporting and paying the amount of Social Security and Medicare taxes. As an employer, you also have your own liability of unemployment tax. You're also withholding from your employees' pay income taxes. So an employer can do that work, but again, a lot of them choose to use payroll services. So let's talk about the resources that are available for you. At irs.gov, you can go and find this site, Outsourcing Payroll and Third-Party Payers. You can see the links, employers outsourcing payroll responsibilities, to give you information to help you understand what you should be looking for when making these important decisions. Third-party arrangements, and there we're talking about the payroll service providers and the different types of options that you have there. You see the 4 bullet points. And you can see barely at the bottom there, a third-party arrangement chart. So when you're going through and trying to make a decision on what are the best choices, there is this chart that is available for you. And you can see the different options up at the headings there. And you can look through and get information to help you make good choices if you decide to use a payroll service provider. Why are we telling you this? Unfortunately, IRS has seen situations where payroll service providers have stolen the funds that are, again, the trust funds, these taxes that are withheld from employees' pay, held in trust, and we're supposed to be paid over to the IRS. We've seen limited situations, but we have seen it where those things have occurred. So we want to make this information available to you and help you make good choices. Specifically, there is the option, the certified payroll employer organization. That's a little bit different than the other three, and there is more specific information on that CPEO option for you. The CPEO option was set up by the IRS, and in these situations, the CPEO organization certifies with the IRS that it meets certain responsibilities and certain obligations in order for the IRS to identify them as a CPEO organization. So take a look at that information as well. In addition to the payrolls, we organizations that some of us think of, the big organizations like ADP. A lot of us have heard of ADP. They do payroll processing for big and small organizations. But in addition to the payroll organizations, we want you to be aware of the help that we can provide you if you're using tax professionals to help you prepare your tax returns. And some of those tax professionals, even the smaller ones, can offer payroll services as well. What we want you to understand is that there is no federal law that requires someone who's a tax return preparer to have a certain amount of education, to pass a certain test. That law does not exist. Anyone can set up a tax return preparation business. Now, there are a couple of states that have set up laws that require regulation, that do regulate tax return preparers in those states. Off the top of my head, California, Oregon, I think Maryland as well. But those are just a few states. But there are individuals who have earned credentials, who have passed tests, that are out there and provide tax preparation services. We want to make you aware of the resources to help you there. This is one of those. Need someone to help prepare your tax return on irs.gov. You may not be able to see it, but in the middle there is a link to tax preparer credentials and qualifications. A tax preparer can be a CPA, a certified public accountant. Those individuals have passed a test given by their state certifying board. And typically it includes a section on taxes. Lawyers can specialize in tax law, and lawyers need to pass a bar exam given by their state licensing agencies. The Internal Revenue Service has what was called an enrolled agent designation, and these individuals have passed a test given by the IRS. They are experts in federal tax law. There's also something called an annual filing season test, and those individuals pass a test on an annual basis given by the IRS. Those individuals, if they prepare your tax return, can help represent you in front of the IRS in, for example, like an exam situation. A CPA, an EA, a licensed attorney, they can represent you before the IRS, even if they did not prepare your tax return. Just a quick review of those credentials. Now, if you're looking for someone who help prepare your returns, there is a directory of federal tax return preparers with credentials and select qualifications. You can go down and enter your zip code and identify these tax return preparers who have registered with the site and are available to help you. Like anything, when you're going out and looking at someone to provide you with service, uh, look into those individuals, look into those organizations, Better Business organizations, get references, talk to interview these organizations. Don't just, do your homework is what I'm saying. Make sure that you're comfortable and you've done all the homework you can to get comfortable that you're working with someone that you trust and is a good for your business. So with that, I've come to the conclusion, and I just wanted to go over a review of what we've gone over. I hope today's presentation has been helpful for you. And what we've done is go over the employees and independent contractors that up front, you need to make a decision whether an individual working for you is an employee or independent contractor, and the categories to consider when making that determination. Also, the resources to help you make that determination. We looked at the things you need to do to verify work authorization of an individual coming to you, wanting to work for you. The need to get from those individuals as employees the Form W-4. Also, your employer responsibilities with the W-4 and the W-2. The Earned Income Tax Credit. We briefly mentioned the ITINs. We talked about the electronic methods to file these information returns with the IRS and the Social Security Administration. That publication 15, the Employer's Tax Guide, the Bible, these are all, again, resources free from IRS. There's also a hotline that they can call at the IRS, the 800-829-4933, the Business and Specialty Tax Line, specially set up for employers. And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Karen.
Mike, thank you so much for a really super informative program. You can see Mike's contact information here. I've been putting a lot of information and links in the chat to the things Mike was talking about. You should be able to go into the upper right part of the chat where it says IRS Small Business Tax Workshops, where it says the name of the webinar. And there's 3 little dots. And if you click on that, you should be able to save the chat, and that will give you all of the links. So I'm going to just leave this open for another minute or so, so folks can do that. Tomorrow, please do come back and join us for a session on how to figure the withholding taxes. That was kind of a big elephant in the room today, and it will be discussed tomorrow. I do want to just say once again, Mike, thank you so much. Again, I'll hold the Zoom open for another minute or two as people copy those chats, and then this recording will be put on our website, but probably not for another couple of weeks. Okay, thank you all so much for joining, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. And Mike, thank you as always. See you
Thank
all
you very
tomorrow.
much.
All right. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye.